Hello, how you doing today? This is old 86 here again to reminisce on my life and all the fun I had. I just finished working for the Army on repairing a lot of their sophisticated communications equipment, which I say sophisticated because that's what it was. It was a lot more complicated because a lot of it was in code and stuff, so the enemy couldn't understand it if they did receive it, try to hack in on it. So I'd finished repairing and caught them up to date there at Hill Air Force Base in Utah, and so I was looking in the paper and found out that the Boeing company was needing electronics technicians, so by golly, I just went up to Seattle, and Seattle surprised me. It was beautiful country. I might have already described it, but if you haven't been to and want to go visit any place in the United States, it's a wonderful place to go and live, because it was a wooded country, you know. It would a lot of greenery and scenery, the mountains and the waterways. If you're a boating addict, boy, you got the canals and all the islands out, toward you know, going west into the ocean. They have quite a lot of islands there and two big lakes. And in fact, this Seattle is just right on the edge of the first big lake, and that's the biggest. It's so big you'd almost think it's an inland waterway. And oh, by the way, that lake is where the biggest of outboard or inboard motor racing is held. I think every year, because I know they held it when I was up there, and they're great big motorboats. They're just a motorboat, that's what they were. And they're great big boats, and it's really quite impressive, because they're the kind that really kicks the water up, and they really go. And in this one race that I was fortunate to see, one of them went so fast that it took off in the air, and the front end went up, over and back, and that was the biggest boat crash I ever saw. Of course, well, it's the only one, but it was really impressive and bad, because I think the two people in it died, you know. It was a terrible, impressive, but terrible for the results. But if you like being in boats and traveling, that is a good place to live. And it's a good place to live because of the mountains, the hiking, and the scenery. I never get not tired of seeing some of these here mountains with houses all the way up. You wouldn't think they'd want to build a house up on something like that, but they did, and it was impressive. And then going into Seattle, you have the opportunity of going right through a tree. They built a tunnel in a tree. They have those great big, I think they're redwoods or something like that. But anyways, they had big trees, and they actually, you could drive a car through a tunnel they made through the tree. Because I know I went through that in my car. Well, that's enough about Seattle. Well, I couldn't help it though, because I just loved it up there. And I couldn't help but talk about it. So I went to work for the Boeing Company and back to school. They had a special school on all their advanced electronic manufacturing helps. And by helps, I mean helps. You could put a piece of metal that's big enough to make a part, and it was electronically controlled so that it would drill holes and cut off pieces and shape it, whatever it was programmed to do, and the program was on tape. It was a good strong tape, and the instruction to the computers that sent their messages to the motors and stuff that operated all this. You could just put that metal in there and it would work it out. If it needed to put a hole in it, it would back off and go to a wheel on it and change the tool. It was fascinating to watch it even. And you know, that part was 3 millionths of an inch, exactly the same. And that's what you have to have when you're building airplanes, because airplanes they have to be built right, you know.
Otherwise they fall out of the sky.
Yeah, or they would just fall out of the sky, and that's terrible to see.
Yeah.
So anyway, now that we're getting down to the Boeing Company, they was building the B-52 bomber, which it wasn't the biggest. The B-36 that consolidated Vultee in Fort Worth, Texas. I worked on that first, and but when I got to Boeing Company, they was building the B-52, which wasn't quite as big as the B-36, but it was a lot faster, you know, because it was completely jet.
Right. While the B-36 was prop.
Reciprocal propellers. Well,
right.
Now the B-36 did have 2 big jet engines on each wingtip, which was pretty powerful in big jets. Probably because that was a big airplane.
Right.
A lot of stuff to go. But before that, well, yeah, so the B-36 was still the biggest airplane in the world, except that wooden one that this here guy built.
Spruce Goose.
Yeah, and I don't think it ever took off, did it?
It sort of took off. I mean, it like barely took off.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Well, that was a
And that was only one time.
They probably learned a lot by building it.
Right.
And learned the respect and.
Well, they learned that you need to make airplanes out of lighter material.
Yeah, the lightest material you can do it, and that's, I guess, aluminum, or I guess.
Yeah.
Or maybe they use a lot of lightweight plastic and stuff like that. But now, the B-36 was the biggest in the world, but the spies from Russia stole the plans of it, redesigned it a little bit to be bigger and a little longer by just a little bit. And then they could claim, and they did claim, that Russia had the biggest military airplane in the world. And that was true by maybe a foot or two, you know. Braggers.
Right.
Anyway, I don't have anything against Russian people. They're probably just like us, you know.
Right.
They have their problems too, and so forth. But anyway, I got a big important job on the beef. Oh, I finished the school, and then I went to the factory. And at first I, of course, learned all the how to work and work with and operate electronic tape readers and
Right.
stuff like that, and test it and load them with the tape, and which the whole thing was learning the process. So after I'd oh, one other thing. They, to show you how precise the B-52 was, they put the material in a machine for the whole wing, and that was computer controlled. Every rivet, every bolt, every part of it was that precise 3/millionths of an inch. And of course, when you're dealing with airplanes, they have to be built pretty good, you know. And we, as far as I'm concerned, we had the best built. I don't know whether Russia had computer control built airplanes or not, but
well,
they flew.
Yeah.
So
they flew, but generally speaking, the United States had more sophisticated airplanes because, like, they had more sophisticated instruments like radar.
Oh, they did?
Yep.
I didn't know that. We had some pretty good radar, but I guess if they had more, because that's a real plus, because they don't just use radar to guide, well, to see if something's coming.
Right.
They use radar in big guns.
Right.
And stuff to home in bullets on a target. Well, that's just an example. And for a lot of little things like that, they use the radar principles and so forth to do that. So, getting back to the B-52 factory where I was set. So they gave me the job of compensating the flux gate on the compass system. And what it was a thing about, oh, this big round black thing with a round globe that had the compass in it that was floating in some oil of some kind, and electronic transmitting its position. And it had to be free of any magnetic influences, so they put it way out on the edge of the wing. That's where it was installed, and guess who got that job?
You did.
I did. And not only that, but I had to get up on that airplane, and they put a tractor on the landing gear to put it out on what they called the compass rose. And it was a big slab of cement, big enough to hold the whole airplane, so that it had Well, actually the markings of what I had to line up the airplane was a water tower about 5 miles away on a little mountain. No, well, it wasn't. It was on the foothills of the mountains about 6 miles away. And I had to have the airplane exactly in one spot that was marked. And then I would line up the compass, my transit, on that water tower with everything with precision, the legs of where the tripod was, and everything. It all had to be just exactly. And I'd have them pull, I had the earphones and I could talk to the tractor driver, and I'd tell him, okay, slow down, okay, stop, you know.
Right.
And I'd have that right on there, and then I had to adjust to make sure. If it was off just a little bit, I had the capability on that flux gate up there to make sure it was just exactly on. So that was, well, then of course I had to go down and make sure all the other parts, the indicators and that, was all lined up too.
Right.
But there was nothing to that. They make things so that they're easily adjusted and able to operate. So now that we know where we're going, straight north,
Right.
we had to pull the airplane back in on the flight line. And see, I think I told you about, I never did get in on the watching them fly any. Oh yes, I did. I was out on the Compass Rose one day, and Tex something or other, the test pilot,
Right.
was up there testing one out. And he was flying just right overhead. And you know what he did? He took the B-52, which is not too much smaller than the B-36. It was a big bomber too.
Right.
He was doing barrel rolls up there and flying that thing like it was in a circus. Of course, Tex Johnson, he was the test pilot, and he had to test every one of them out.
Right.
So I had a grandstand seat out there to where I could watch that. And I was thankful for that, because I enjoyed seeing things like that. Ever since I built that kite,
Right.
out on the farm when I was a boy, and got about 10 feet off the ground, that's what the kite did when I first tried it out. And I realized how fast I was going up, and so I had to let loose before I got too high. And I got up 10 feet, just holding on to that string. It was nylon string, and of course I fell down in the soft pastures, so it didn't hurt me. Ever since then, I've been quite interested in airplanes. Okay, so I did that. I think that was a big job. Not really, kind of insignificant compared to some of the sophisticated equipment aboard it, but I never did really get into that as much as I did on the B-36.
Right.
The B-36 had the equipment, the electronic equipment, that when they was flying towards the enemy and with sensitive receivers, they could pick up the enemy's radar. and they could, with their instruments, produce an exact opposite and shoot it back at them, and that would foul up their radar. The radar wouldn't know what was going on. I can just imagine what it looked like. Dials in there twirling around trying to figure out which pumps to go by. So that's what I did there. But while I was in Seattle, I must have worked in that factory, because though I did a lot of inside work in the factory on these tape readers and keeping all that up too. Of course, I wasn't the only one there. We had a crew.
Right.
But I got in a lot of that too. But I worked there for, must have been a year or so. And so naturally, I bought me a motorboat, because that's all the canals and good places to go boating. I bought me a 12-foot speedboat. And by speedboat, it was aluminum and real light, but it had a windshield and the seats just like you see in boats. Like the front was covered, and I had a 25 Evinrude motor, which is too big for the boat really, but I had it anyway, because that would really push that. I could really move in the water. You just had to you had to be careful not to lean too much or try to make too sharp a turn, or I'd been in trouble. But I never did get in trouble. And talking about that, I was on a lake inland, and it was a beautiful lake, and it had a island that went out, and then the island really narrowed down to about 8 feet of a sandbar, and then went up into a more big enough to where it had a few trees and a nice picnic area. But it was mostly what you'd call an island really, because it was almost separated from the land. And I had my old smart-aleck brother visiting us. He's the one younger than the one that was next to me. He was always a smart aleck, especially if there's any girls around. And he, of course, we pulled each other skiing, but he wanted me to pull him. And out on that small sandy length of land there, which was about 20 feet long, it was plenty wide. The girls was on one end on the sand, but they're having a picnic, about 3 or 4 girls. And I don't have anything against girls myself. In fact, I kind of like them. And, anyway, boy, I wish I had a girl now. Yeah, I was pulling my brother, of course. Well, let me finish what happened that day, and I'll give you another time I got even with him. He was always pulling something on all us other boys. So I was pulling him on the skis. Boy, he was having a ball, because boy, when you get going fast on the skis, you can kind of act up, you know, if you don't slip and fall. He was showing off to these girls, and he said, he hollered and told the guy, one of my other brothers was sitting back by the engine, and he let us know he wanted us to pull him and guide him in and then move out of the way so he could speed over that sand into the other side, you know, by all those girls, and show just
right.
how good he was. So I got going as fast as that boat would go, and I pulled around there and whipped him into it. Now, if you've ever done any skiing, you can really get somebody going fast by whipping them. You know, it's like
Right.
on a fishing pole, you go like this to make that line really go out there. So I whipped him into that sand, and I don't think he knew that when skis hit sands, it stops. But I knew that. So I got going as fast as I could. Oh, I'm ashamed of myself. Got as fast as I could. And when he hit that sand, I never saw anybody that he left the skis and he was somersaulting, all kind of gymnastics for must have been about 20 feet or so before he hit this sand, just before he hit the water. Too bad I wasn't going faster where he would have landed in the water, but he hit that sand, and it didn't really hurt him though, other than his, you know, he wasn't too happy. But he didn't blame me, because he wanted me to whip him, you know, make him go as fast as he could. I just didn't warn him. So I don't feel too bad.
Right.
Yeah, because when we lived and we was, I was interested in then. I must have been in the 2nd or 3rd grade. We was living in a house. Now you know these houses, that half the first floor is down in the ground, 4 feet, and then they have the ground and steps going down and steps going up to the first floor above, or no, the 2nd floor would really be, if you figure that, first floor. And that was in the basement, really. You call them a basement. We still call it a basement, but they build them that way so the ceiling is high enough where you could have windows, you know.
Right.
Fairly narrow windows, maybe a foot wide or something, around to give a lot of light down there, and it worked out good. Well, we had a bathroom down there and our bedrooms, and he had a habit of pulling off things on us, you know, tricks, to like shooting spit wads at us and one thing and another, children's things, you know. And well, by that time I was well aware, and I had in my possession an old Model A spark coil. And then, of course, I had it rigged up so I could make sparks. Well, I played with that a lot, because the high voltage really didn't hurt you. It didn't burn you too much. But anyway, he went in to go to the bathroom, and so I dumped a cup of water on the floor of the door going out, and hooked that spark plug and put the hot wire down in that water. And well, I didn't hear nothing. But a little later, he must have crawled out, got a really good hit, because he climbed out the window. And he came around and was pretty mad, but I was bigger than he was.
Right.
He was, he was 2 below me in size, in age, younger. And he really didn't say nothing or do nothing. He just didn't seem to pick on me anymore too much. So it helped, I guess.
Right.
Just one of those things that I remember. And another thing, at that time, I was taking accordion lessons, and I got so I could play a little bit on an accordion. But I never did really pursue that line. You know, I was too much interested in the electronics.
Right.
But now getting back to the Boeing Company, well, I worked until, I forgot why I left there. They must have got up to the point, you know, where they was cutting on people and stuff. And so I think I'd got another offer for a good job, and so. But before that, I bought a motorcycle. Oh yeah, I've got to get this in because that's important. I bought a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and time. How's the time? And how's the time?
Oh, that's good.
Okay. I'll get into that next time.
Okay.